Woman gets a big surprise from the wild bird she nursed to health. Australia's Gold Coast is jam-packed with wildlife. Locals don't bat an eyelash at exotic animals hanging out in their yards. Spotting a kangaroo, dingo, or tropical bird isn't that big of a deal, unless that creature heads straight for you. A woman in Queensland enjoyed the brightly colored birds who frequented her home balcony. She'd feed them without fear and enjoy their company while reading. But after the day one usual bird flapped its way towards her, neither of their lives were ever the same. Bee was sitting on her deck, nestled in a canopy of trees, when a brightly colored lorikeet flew straight towards her. She was used to tropical birds hanging out on her balcony, but this bird was seeking human contact, a troubling sign. The animal was distressed, panting and puffing his feathers. He climbed right onto Bee, who stroked his head despite her own surprise. This soothing worked. The bird quickly curled up on her shoulder and went to sleep. 2 hours later, the lorikeet stirred. Bee had never experienced this sort of behavior from a wild bird. And given that her house is nestled in the treetops of the Australian tropics, she saw way more exotic fowl than the average person. Assessing his condition, Bee was concerned that the bird was injured. He allowed her to touch him and gingerly examined his wing. Nothing seemed broken, but something had badly frazzled this little guy. After he woke up, the colorful bird didn't fly away. Bee guessed his sense of ease around people was probably due to his weakened state. The bird still showed signs that he was still not fully recovered, though he did start to make himself more comfortable. While she was getting some food together inside, the curious lorikeet perked up out on the deck. He hopped his way straight into the kitchen, like he owned the joint. That's when Bee knew this bird was truly something special. The bird waddled his way around the interior of the home, checking everything out. He pretty much spent the day with Bee in her house recouping. Those precious hours had deeply impacted both of them. From that day forward, the lorikeet was a part of the family. He just wouldn't leave. Bee loved having the bird around the house, and each day they learned more about each other's personalities. Not long into their friendship, Bee noticed that her new pal had a habit of bobbing his head with enthusiasm. His little dance and spunkiness inspired a nickname fit for a funky little king, Elvis. When Elvis flew onto Bee's balcony, it was like he had found where he was always meant to be. He was instantly comfortable with the human and her space, so much that Bee grew concerned about his lack of socialization. So Bee tried to integrate Elvis with some other birds who frequented her balcony. Thankfully, there were all sorts of exotic feathered creatures who still perched on her railings every day. She hoped Elvis would befriend somebody while dipping in the bird bath. Several mingling dates later, Elvis flew off with the rest of the birds, though not for long. He always returns home to his chosen Mama Bee. In the mornings, Elvis waits patiently for her on the other side of the sliding glass door. Each day, Bee welcomes Elvis home like a teenager returning home from a sleepover. He joins her in many of her activities, tapping his beak on the iPad while she works on her computer, and demanding to get in on the action when she does her makeup. That's right, Elvis doesn't shy away from a bit of a bold look. He is a brightly plumbed tropical lorikeet after all. Bee lets her bird son peck away at her eyeshadow palettes without concern. If something makes Elvis happy, it's worth it. If you're skeptical about whether a wild lorikeet like Elvis could actually enjoy being handled by humans, all you need to do is listen to the bird sing to his heart's content. He is quite the chatty Cathy, always whistling and tweeting his lungs out in conversation. Of all the spots in the house, Elvis prefers the dish rack. Naturally, the metal bars resemble a bird cage, which he just can't help but climb. He's free to come and go as he pleases, but he's treated Bee's house like his own from the start. Once he's had his fill of home comforts, Elvis rejoins his buddies. Bee's house is the definition of an open-door policy. He comes and goes, enjoying the benefits of living wild and free, with a human to scratch his head when he wants. Watching Elvis fit in with the other birds made Bee feel so proud of his progress. One day, she spotted him cozying up to a female lorikeet. Not too much later, Elvis brought her home for Mom's stamp of approval. For the past 3 years, Elvis has been a fixture in Bee's life. He's like her outdoor cat with wings. Free on his account, but too much of a mama's boy to leave the nest for good. It's hard to deny that Bee and Elvis meeting was fate. He needed help, and she was there to give it.